So I'm Kate Snow, the author of the Math with Confidence series, and I live in Grand Rapids, Michigan. I've got two kids, 15 and 18. And I have a undergraduate degree in math as well as a master's degree in elementary education. And I've done kind of a little bit of everything in my career. I've homeschooled my own kids. I've taught public school, fifth grade. I've tutored kids of all ages in math. I've taught co-op classes in my local area. And as I homeschooled my own kids, I realized how much math could be a source of stress for a lot of homeschool parents. When I would sit around the lunch table at co-op, I would hear people's stories and just get the sense that a lot of people weren't sure if they were doing enough, if they were doing it right, and really needed a lot of help feeling like they could give their kid a strong foundation in math. So that's what inspired me to start writing math books for homeschoolers. I started back in the era when blogs were big. So one New Year's Eve, as a New Year's resolution, I Googled how to start a blog and wrote my first article and sent it to 20 local friends. And from there, just started writing articles, started writing books, the Preschool Math at Home book, the Math Facts That Stick series, and now the Math with Confidence series. And throughout all of my work, I'm just on a mission to really equip parents to teach math with confidence, to help their kids build a solid foundation of math so that they know and to know that they're giving their kids a great start. So let's take a quick look at what we'll be covering here tonight, or today, this afternoon, depending on which time zone you're in. So first, we'll talk about the goals and philosophy of the program as a whole. Next, I'll give you an overview of the first and second grade levels, talk about what your child will learn, how to prep for the year, and then I'll answer some common questions. And at the end, I'll save some time to open it up for Q&A, and I'll show you how to do that then. You'll also see that Donna Hunter is here co-hosting the webinar with me. She is my wonderful assistant, a veteran homeschool mom, and also a pilot tester for the upper levels of Math with Confidence. So she'll be just making sure everything works well here, and she'll be helping answer some questions at the end. And if you have your books, I'd recommend having them handy. You might want to look at things as we go through here and as I give you a little tour of the program. So we'll start here with the goals of the Math with Confidence program overall. So I have three goals in mind as I write the program. One is to help kids develop conceptual understanding in math. And that means understanding the why of math, not just the how. It means helping kids see that math is full of interconnected topics, that they all relate to each other, that there's a reason for every procedure they learn. That's not just a whole bunch of isolated procedures to memorize. And this leads to deeper learning. Usually it's more interesting. And it also helps kids retain what they've learned better when they see how their concepts relate to other concepts. The second goal is to help kids develop proficiency with essential skills. Because, of course, if you just have conceptual understanding but can't actually solve problems, it's not going to get you very far. So I include lots of practice to make sure that kids really have those fundamental skills down. And then third, my goal is to help kids develop a positive attitude towards math. They don't have to love math or have it be their favorite subject, but I hope they'll at least enjoy their lessons, they'll look forward to it, that they won't dread math or that there will be lots of math tears. And so I include lots of games and real life activities and help build their confidence so that they feel good about their math skills. Because when kids have all three of these conceptual understanding, proficiency with essential skills, and then that positive attitude, they feel successful and confident in math. So the philosophy of the program is kind of the ways that I put those goals into practice in each level. So first of all, Math with Confidence focuses on one new concept at a time. You'll spend an entire, several weeks focusing on understanding what addition means or measuring length. And each lesson builds sequentially and logically on the one before it. It's a very incremental program. I really try not to take big leaps, but to take small little jumps every day so that children they feel like they understood what happened the day before, and now they add just a little bit more on so they understand the new idea or the new concept or skill in the same way. And this is called a mastery approach to new topics. But that doesn't mean your child has to master every lesson or every skill before moving on to the next one. It just means that we're seeking to master sort of one topic at a time. We're not just jumping around every day. And then, in addition to that, there is daily practice and review throughout Math Confidence to provide that ongoing review of core skills. And this helps develop that proficiency because getting fluent with any skill takes a lot of practice. You might thoroughly understand how to do something, but that doesn't mean you can just do it automatically. And so there's spaced out review. It's called the spiral approach to review because kids return to the same topic over and over, like a spiral returns to the same point in the circle over and over. And you'll find that woven throughout the program. And I'll show you how that's in first and second grade coming up here in a minute. I've also aimed to make Math with Confidence to provide thorough, rigorous coverage of grade level topics. It's considered on grade level by American public school standards. And that's because I know that often kids either come out of public schools to homeschooling or vice versa. And so to have the books be roughly on grade level helps ease that transition. When you compare Math with Confidence to other homeschool programs, it's generally considered kind of a middle of the road difficulty level. It's not the easiest and it's also not the most challenging. But that doesn't mean, just because it's not the most challenging, doesn't mean that kids don't learn a lot with Math with Confidence. Because each step is so incremental and because the practice problems are very doable, kids build a lot of their skills. They build a lot of confidence as they are going through each lesson. And the thing is that math doesn't have to be hard for kids to really gain wonderful proficiency and to be very good at math. That's I think a common misunderstanding in America to think that math has to be hard for it to be rigorous. And often when programs are more difficult, it leads to more frustration, not more learning. And so this approach really helps kids build that confidence and positive attitude. And I just wanted to share this with you. These are the results that the fifth grade Math with Confidence pilot students had when they took the California Achievement Test at the end of their fifth grade year. This was in spring 2024. And you'll see that the average grade equivalent for the kids was 8.1. The median grade equivalent was grade 8. And that the 99th percentile rank means that half of the kids in the program scored at the 99th percentile or better. It was really extraordinary results. And a lot of the parents were kind of surprised. They were like, math's been so easy. It's been so pleasant. I had no idea my child was doing so well. So I just want to reassure you that even though Math with Confidence isn't the hardest program out there, it really does get good results. All right, so now that we've talked about kind of the overall approach that I take to math and Math with Confidence, let's dig into these first and second grade levels. So for both first and second grade, you will need two books, the instructor guide and the student workbook. All of the instruction is in the instructor guide. That's what contains those hands-on scripted lessons that you'll use to teach your child. And then the workbooks contain practice and review for your child to complete after your teaching time. Occasionally, you'll use the workbook during the lesson in second grade, but it's not very often. And both books in both levels are available as print books or as PDFs directly from my publisher. So first grade has 11 units that are split into 32 weeks. Usually there's 2 to 3 weeks per unit. And then there's 5 lessons per week. 4 of them are required core lessons, and 1 of them is an optional enrichment lesson. And I'll show you a little bit more of the details of that in a second. In general, the pilot families said that these took about 20 to 30 minutes per lesson. So about 10 to 15 minutes for the parent-led part, and then like 5 to 10 minutes for the child to complete the independent part of the lesson. And second grade is very similar. There's 14 units split over 32 weeks, and again, with those 4 required lessons and 1 optional enrichment lesson per week. And these time guidelines that I put here are very, your mileage may vary. Every family is different. Every kid is different. If you have a lot of little ones who are interrupting, of course, that will slow you down. If you've got older kids to attend to while you're doing the lesson, that will also slow you down. So I can't guarantee those times, but it's also a good amount of time for first and second graders to spend. 20 to 30 minutes is usually the edge of their attention span. And so that's kind of the recommended amount of time to spend each day. Okay, and now I'll just kind of give you a quick tour of how the pages are structured, or how the books are structured. So each unit begins with an overview that tells you what your child will learn. It also lists the recommended math picture books. for the unit. These picture books are included in that optional enrichment lesson at the end of each week. And then there's also an overview of each week of the program. Begins with just an overview of what you'll teach and the names of the lessons. Then there's a feature called Teaching Math with Confidence, and I really recommend you try to give these a glance each week. They orient you as a teacher to what you'll be teaching that week, and they help kind of build you grow as a teacher while you're teaching your child. And then there's also extra materials that you'll need for the week, so you can glance this over to see if there's anything you need to grab. So here in week one, I believe this is first grade, you need a small ball or bean bag, and then there's a couple things listed for the optional enrichment lesson at the end of the week. So now let's go ahead and take a look at a lesson. This is lesson 2.1 in first grade, so it is week 2, and then the first lesson of that week, 5 and some more on the 10 frame. It begins with a box that describes the purpose and materials for each section of the lesson. And then there's a warm-up that includes counting, memory work, and review. So there's a quick counting activity, a couple memory work questions of things that your child will memorize over the course of the year, and then a quick review activity. After that, you get into the main lesson, and the bold text indicates the words you say, so it's completely scripted. You can just pick it up and start reading if you're having a busy day, and then just follow the directions. The gray boxes within each lesson, they tell you, they're notes to you. You can skip them entirely, but they'll also give you a little more detail or sometimes answer common questions. So glance them over if you're confused or wondering more about what you're teaching. And then that's more of this is a 2-page activity, so it continues on to the next page. There's a large gray box with some explanation about the 10 frame. And then there's an activity called Race to 10. It's a game, so it has little game directions there in a box. And then finally, at the end of the lesson, your child does the workbook independently, or as independently as your first or second grader is up to. You can always sit nearby if that's what's helpful to your child. And this is what the workbook pages look like for this lesson. So throughout first and second grade, the first page is typically a practice page. It practices the skills that your child just learned in your hands-on lesson. And so here, the child was working with numbers on the 10 frame, so it's matching 10 frames to those written numbers. And then the second page is a review page. That's where your child gets that ongoing review of important skills. And so here at the beginning of first grade, your child will practice some number writing and then practice patterns. And then, like I said, the 5th lesson in each week is an optional enrichment lesson. Emphasis on the optional. You do not have to do this. If you only do school 4 days a week, it's perfectly fine to completely skip these. But if you'd like to use them, they're there and they're often a lot of fun. There's a quick counting, memory work, and review activity. Then there's a recommended math picture book for you to enjoy with your child. And then also an enrichment activity. These are things that are a little bit more complicated or require more materials, so I've included them here as fun options. This one is making a life-size number line. And you can always adjust these to fit your family. So I think for this one, I recommended you could use chalk outside. You could put masking tape over carpet. You could use a long strip of paper. Feel free to modify these or mix them up to kind of fit whatever you have, the amount of time you have, and how much energy you have for going into a project like this. And while these are scheduled as the 5th lesson of the week, you can do them at any point in the week too. So if you like to do school 4 days a week and want to do them, you could always do them as like a little fun extra on one of your days. All right, so next let's get into what your child will learn in first and second grade. So throughout first and second grade, it's going to be lots and lots of focus on place value, addition, and subtraction. In first grade, your child will learn about place value and develop deeper number sense with the numbers to 100. Uh, she'll learn the addition and subtraction facts. At the end of the year, she'll begin doing some mental addition and subtraction with 2-digit numbers. She'll also learn about shapes and length, the money calendar, and telling time to the hour and half hour. And as well, she'll also work with tally charts and bar graphs. And second grade takes a lot of those same skills, but goes deeper with them. So in your second grader will learn about place value and develop deeper number sense with the numbers to 1,000. He'll do more mental addition and subtraction with 2-digit numbers and also with some 3-digit numbers. And then he'll also learn the written processes, the traditional, line the numbers up vertically and stack them and add and subtract. He'll learn the processes for doing that. And then besides that, he'll learn about 2D shapes, 3D shapes, go a little bit deeper in measuring length, learn about both the metric system and the US customary system. He'll learn about money, he'll learn how to tell time to the minute. Then there are bar graphs, pictographs, and line graphs, as well as an introduction to simple fractions. And like I said, there's a lot of addition and subtraction throughout first and second grade. And so I think it's helpful just kind of a sense of how this overlaps. So in first grade, you'll teach your child the concept of addition and subtraction, work on the math facts, and then do a little bit of mental math. In second grade, you'll begin by reviewing the math facts for addition and subtraction, then going deeper into mental math, and then that will lead to the written process. And you might notice that this is a lot of time spent on mental math in first and second grade. And parents sometimes wonder why, because, after all, once you know the written process, you can just stack the numbers and solve them. But the thing is that the main purpose of the mental math in first and second grade isn't just to be able to solve problems. It also has a lot of other benefits. And so today I just want to take a few minutes talking about the benefits of mental math and how best to teach it. So, one of the main reasons that we teach that mental math gets a lot of focus in Math with Confidence is because it helps kids develop deeper number sense. When you are taking numbers apart and putting them back together, you get to know them in a much deeper level, not just that 37, is the number after 36, but that it's 3 less than 40, that it's 7 more than 30, that it's 2 more than 35, and to really learn how to take the numbers apart and put them together in deeper ways. It also helps kids really, really get place value down, which is a core skill of first and second grade. Place value is deceptively simple to adults. For us, it just makes total sense. And it's easy for kids to just parrot what their parents say. Any kindergartner could say, nope, that's the ones place, that's the tens place, if they've been taught to do so. But understanding what it actually means to have groups of tens versus ones takes a lot of practice. It takes some abstract thought. And so kids need a lot of work with that. And mental math, with mental math, kids are often using place value to take numbers apart and put them back together. So it helps them really understand those place value concepts. And then the other major benefit of mental math is that it previews the steps in the written process. The trade step, or what you might think of as regrouping or carrying and borrowing. Um, by doing a lot of mental math before the written process, kids really develop their understanding of what those steps mean so that they're ready to learn the written process much more easily. And then these mental math skills also help kids as they get into third and fourth grade working on multiplication and division. They carry over as they have this deeper number sense with these numbers. They're able to learn multiplication and division more easily. And so here's just a simple example from first grade of mental math. In first grade, we'll use bags of 10 counters often to represent multi-digit numbers. And so here we have 48 plus 1. There's 4 tens and 8 ones, and add one more 1, so then it's a total of 49. But then contrast that with 48 plus 10. So a child might solve this problem by seeing that 48 is 4 tens and 8. They think, oh, if I add one more 10, then I have 5 tens and 8, so 58. And that's just a simple example, but for kids, that takes a lot of abstract thinking. And so you will spend a lot of time on that to make sure they have this idea completely down by the time they get to that written process later in second grade. And also just to point out that these numbers or these problems are written horizontally. So whenever you see horizontal problems in first and second grade Math with Confidence, you'll know that's something that's meant to be solved with the mental math skills, not by stacking it and using the written process. All right, so a couple tips for teaching mental math. One is to don't skip these lessons or rewrite the problems vertically. Your kids will miss out on all the benefits if you just skip over them or let them go straight to the written process. I know it can be tempting when they feel challenging or when a child feels like when they would rather just move on to that, but there's really a lot of benefit they're worth spending the time on. I also recommend focusing on quality over quantity. So it's better for your child to solve just a couple problems thoroughly rather than to try to solve a whole bunch of problems. It's always fine for you on the workbook. If there's too many problems on a workbook page, you can cross them out. Allow your child to use manipulatives as much as needed. We'll use bags of counters, coins, play money, base 10 blocks. And your child may need to work out every step in mental math problems for a while when he or she's first getting started. Also, keep in mind that mental math is not meant to be a memory challenge. And so, if your child needs to write down in between steps, that's okay. Especially in second grade, where your child might be working with like two-digit numbers and there's a lot of different digits to keep track of. It's fine to write down the in between steps or for you to scribe them. And then finally, let your child use any method that uses place value strategies. You will model specific strategies that are in the teacher's guide, but it's okay if your child comes up with other ways to solve them, as long as they're not counting one by one, as long as they're using some good place value strategies, they can use their own approach, as long as they're kind of understanding what you're teaching them as well. Okay, so that was just kind of a real quick pep talk about mental math, since I know it can be challenging to teach sometimes. And now we'll get more into the nitty-gritty of probably what you're thinking about right now as you get ready to start the school year, how to prep for the year. And I'm going to walk you through like some specific steps for prepping for the year, but I'll also send you this list as an email after the presentation and have it available for download. So don't worry, this will all come to you in email afterward. So first, please read the introduction in the books. I put tons of information there, and if you have questions as you're teaching throughout the year, often you'll find the answer in the introduction. Second, make your math kit. It's on pages 8 and 9 in first grade and pages 7 to 8 in second grade. And I'm just going to take a second here to show you what you'll need for the math kit for each grade level. All right. I'm just going to pop open my screen here so I can make sure that you can see what I'm holding up here. Okay, so first of all, there's lots of ways if you are in the Math with Confidence Facebook group, which I recommend and we'll talk about more later, you'll know that there's lots of different ways that people organize their math manipulatives. I like to keep things simple. So I keep them all just in one of these plastic shoe boxes. This costs like $2 at Target. And then I like to use Ziploc bags with the slider on top to put each material in because it's a little easier to open and close, especially for younger kids. And so within this book, within this box, here is what you'll need for first grade. So you will need first counters. So these are just two different colors of counters. You'll need 125 counters for first grade. They should be 3/4 inch across or less, so they'll fit on the 10 frame. You'll need a set of pattern blocks. And so these are these colorful shapes. They come in wood, foam, plastic, and you'll use them for developing spatial skills. You'll need coins. For first grade, you need 20 pennies, 20 nickels, 10 dimes, and 4 quarters. You can use real coins or fake ones. You'll also need play money for first grade. And so that you'll need 10 ones, 10 fives, and 10 tens. You'll need 2 packs of index cards for just making number cards and for labeling things in the lessons. And then so most of those you needed for kindergarten. A couple new things you'll need are 2 decks of playing cards, 2 dice, a clock, and a ruler. And that's all you need for the first grade math kit. For second grade, there's very little to add to that. You'll need 8 quarters instead of 4 quarters, so add some quarters to your math kit from first grade. You'll need 10 20s and 10 100s for your play money set. And then the other key manipulative that we're going to add in second grade are base 10 blocks. Again, I just keep my whole set here in one of these shoe boxes. And base 10 blocks are blocks that are arranged so that they can represent place value. That's such a key concept here in first and second grade. And so in second grade, you'll start using these and then you'll continue using them in third and fourth grade. So there's these teeny little blocks that each represent 1. 10 of them get put together to make a 10. 10 of those get put together to make 100. And then 10 of those get put together to make 1,000. So they really help kids understand how different a 10 is from 100 or a 1 is from 1,000. And then you'll use them to represent multi-digit numbers. Throughout the year, you'll use them to model addition and subtraction. So in second grade, they're really important manipulative. Definitely make sure you have a set of those. And again, they're available plastic, wood, foam, any of those are fine. Okay, so once you've made your math kit, then the next step is to copy or print the essential blackline masters and put them in a binder. It's not required that you put them in a binder, but I highly recommend it. They're all available at the back of your instructor guide or at welltrainedmind.com/NWC, MWC for Math with Confidence. And I'll show you what my binder looks like here. So what I do is I have tabs along the side, and there one is for each grade level. So you can keep all the Blackline Masters for the entire series in just one binder. And then if I switch to the first grade tab here, you can see that I just put them all in here. And so they're all ready to go. There's a couple things that need to be cut out, like these shape cards or this tangram shape. And I recommend just leaving them right in their hole until you get to the lesson where you need them. Just because if your house is anything like mine, those will walk away or get mixed with something else before you get to that lesson in November. So just having it there, you'll know you're ready to go and you can cut it up the morning you need them for that lesson. Now, besides putting those Blackline Masters in your binder, I also recommend that you have 10 to 20 empty page protectors in your binder to save the game boards. There's a lot of fun, colorful game boards in first and second grade. So here, for example, here are some of the first grade game boards. And the lessons recommend that you save them so that you can use these games again to practice the multiplication, or sorry, the addition and subtraction facts later in the year. So having those empty page protectors in your binder just makes it very easy to rip them out of the workbook, put them right in that page protector, and then you're ready to go the next time that you want to play that game. And then last, this is a great time to find the answer keys and the helpful resources in the back of the book and online. In first grade, you likely won't need the answer keys too much, but they can still make it a lot faster to check your child's work and make sure that everything is correct. And then in second grade, there starts to be a lot of, two-digit addition and subtraction, and having those answer keys there is very helpful. So you'll find them at the end of each week in the instructor guide. You'll also find the scope and sequence for each level at the end of the book. This is helpful if you need to tell a like homeschool evaluator or virtual charter school what your child will be learning this year. There's a complete list of the memory work that you can use to refer to for practice. And there's also a complete list of all those picture books that are recommended in the optional enrichment lessons. These you can use this if you are requesting a bunch of books from the library, if you're putting an order in for some books. And also keep in mind that a lot of these are available as read alouds on YouTube. And some people have even put together Math with Confidence YouTube lists. So take a look there if you don't have a chance to get the real books. You'll also find the materials list at the back of each book. It includes what you need in your math kit, plus the other household supplies that you need throughout the year. And don't be daunted by this list. Anything that starts with a star is something for one of those optional enrichment lessons. And so you can really decide as you go which ones you want to do, which ones you don't want to do. And if you don't have the supplies, it's fine to skip that. Another helpful resource is the Well-Trained Mind website. Well-Trained Mind is my publisher, and they have a bunch of different helps for Math with Confidence at this URL. First of all, there's that instructor sample and includes all the Blackline Masters at the end if you'd like to print them. There's a sample of the student workbook if you haven't had a chance to look through the workbook yet or haven't bought it. In first grade, there's a metric version of the length unit. So it's written for families that use the US customary system. But if your family uses the metric system, go ahead and download those pages for first grade. There's extra copies of the game boards. You'll be tearing them out of the workbook and keeping them in those page protectors, but I know things go missing sometimes, so we've made extra copies available there. And then there are also extra student pages for students with color vision deficiency or color blindness. If your child is colorblind, there's just a few workbook pages that don't work very well for those students. And so we've made alternate versions you can download there. For second grade, it's a very similar set of resources available. There's also one lesson that got misprinted in the instructor guides, 19.5. It's an enrichment lesson, and definitely download that corrected lesson because the way it's printed does not make sense. It's a number trick that doesn't work otherwise. And then there's a memory work freebie. It's just like a kind of a cute little sign of all the memory work that you can post in your by your lesson area. And then one last resource I wanted to tell you about is the Math with Confidence Facebook community. So this is a group on Facebook. I think there's 11,000 members now, and it is just a wonderfully supportive and positive place for people to share their victories with Math with Confidence, ask for help from other people, and it's a great place to ask questions if you're not sure about something in the program. Um, Even if you don't use Facebook for anything else, I highly recommend it for Math with Confidence for other curriculum communities because it's a great place for homeschoolers to share information. All right. And so now I'll go through a few common questions that I hear from families, and then we'll open up the Q&A. So first, how do I know if my child is ready to start the first grade program? Generally, kids are ready to start the first grade program when they're at least 6. They do not have to have completed a formal kindergarten math program, though. I know that when I wrote first grade, I assumed that some kids would not have done an official kindergarten math program. And so I wrote the first few weeks so that kids would kind of get the core skills they needed and could kind of gradually come on board if they hadn't done a kindergarten program. But your child should be able to write the numbers to 10, solve simple addition and subtraction word problems. Like if you say there's 6 birds and then 3 of them fly away, how many are left? They should be able to act that out with counters and figure out the answer. And they should be able to identify basic shapes. If your child can't do those things, you might want to start with kindergarten math with confidence instead of first grade. On the other hand, people sometimes ask, my child's only 5, but very good with numbers. Should we start with first grade? And this is really a judgment call on your part. It depends on your child's sort of readiness for school type activities as well as their abstract reasoning abilities. So first think about, is your child ready for a 20 to 30-minute lesson and 2 pages of written work? If not, probably it'd be better to not start with first grade, but to start with kindergarten instead. The other thing to think about is your child's level of abstract reasoning. Some fifth graders are, sorry, some 5-year-olds are very good at abstract reasoning and are ready for first grade work. But other kids might start fine and then hit a wall, especially when they hit subtraction. If your child can really reason about numbers pretty abstractly, they're probably ready for first grade. But otherwise, I'd start with kindergarten instead. And overall, you just want to aim for the Goldilocks challenge level. Not too hard, not too easy, just right. So your child isn't bored, frustrated with you for asking such easy questions, but also not frustrated because it's too hard, they don't understand it, or because it's asking them to do abstract reasoning that their brain isn't ready for yet. The overall goal is you want your child to end the year feeling confident and positive in math. Now, regarding the second grade program, children should have completed a first grade math program before starting the second grade program. It's important that they have those core first grade skills under their belts first. And in the introduction, you'll find like a thorough list of what your child should know before starting second grade. But the key skills is that your child should know most of the addition facts within 3 seconds. So that's up to 9 plus 9. So if you say 7 plus 8, it's okay if they think for a second, but they should be able to get that answer within a few seconds. They should know the easier subtraction facts, so the ones that are that begin with the numbers 10 and less, so things like 9 minus 6 or 6 minus 3. And your child should understand place value in 2-digit numbers. Those are all essential skills for beginning the second grade program. Another question that people have sometimes is about those first few weeks of the program, especially first grade. The first few weeks look very easy. Will the program get more challenging? And yes, it absolutely will. I try to keep the first units on the easier side so they provide review, they provide an easy, gentle start to the year, and an introduction to the program for new families. If you find that they're just quite easy for your child, or if you didn't take much of a break over the summer, or your child just really remembers a lot from the previous year, combine lessons as needed and just keep on rolling. Another common question is how to know whether to stick with a lesson or move on. In general, I recommend that you continue teaching lessons in a unit until you get to the unit checkpoint. Each lesson typically builds very gradually on the previous one. And so sometimes moving on to the next lesson helps kind of consolidate what your child learned the day before as well. And I also recommend that you look to the unit checkpoint to see what your child really is expected to know by the end of the unit. Often, skills don't have to be fully mastered before you move on to the next lesson or unit. Your child should generally understand what you have taught them, but they don't have to be perfectly fluent with it. That's that practice piece that takes a lot of time to really develop. And then sometimes there is a skill listed in one of those unit checkpoints that a child still doesn't quite have. And so parents ask, should I camp out on a skill if it's listed in the checkpoint and my child hasn't mastered it? And what I recommend is that you spend a couple days reviewing, but then move on. So, for example, in first grade, I think it's unit 7 suggests that kids should know the addition facts with sums to 10 before they move on to the sums to 20. And yes, if your child doesn't really have those down, it's a good thing to review for a few days before moving on. But the thing is, there's always more review and practice coming in math with confidence. And sometimes kids' brains just have to develop a little bit before they're going to develop that fluency. And so I recommend moving on both just to, continue moving with your year, but also because it's so discouraging to feel stuck, both for the kid and the parent. Nothing makes you feel worse about your math than just doing the same thing over and over. And so for the sake of having a positive attitude and that feeling of sort of moving forward, I don't recommend camping out for more than a few days. But at the same time, you're the parent, you're the one seeing the kid. So if you have a gut feeling like we need more time on this, you go for it. Now, because the addition and subtraction facts are such a big part of first and second grade, people often wonder, when does my child need to have the addition and subtraction facts memorized by? And so the overall goal for the end of first grade, note it's the end of first grade, not in the middle, but by the end, by next May, that your child be mostly fluent with the addition facts to 9 plus 9 and the subtraction facts with the numbers to 10. And the goal for the end of second grade, again, end of second grade, is to be mostly fluent with those addition facts 9 plus 9, as well as the related subtraction facts like 15 minus 8 or 13 minus 4. Not all children will entirely achieve that, but keep that in mind if you're feeling discouraged in the middle of the year, thinking, oh my goodness, we've done the subtraction facts so long and my second grader still doesn't know them. They take a long time to really become automatic. So think about that. That's for the end of the year, that goal. People also sometimes wonder how addition and subtraction facts that stick fit into the program. So these are two books that I wrote before I wrote the Math with Confidence program, and they're meant to be used as supplementary books, not as standalone curriculum. And they're typically not necessary for kids who are using Math with Confidence. Like I said, I include lots of practice, lots of review in Math with Confidence, so most kids will get the practice they need on the math facts right within the program, that you shouldn't need anything else. But they are great for summer review. They're a great way to practice addition facts over the summer after first grade, and they're a great way to practice the subtraction facts during the summer after second grade. So I recommend them for that. And then one other circumstance where I recommend them, this came up recently when I did a presentation at my local homeschool bookstore. I talked to a couple families who were coming into second grade from a different program. And their child really didn't have any of the addition facts down. And the second grade, their kid was kind of ready for second grade work in all other respects. But as they described what was going on with their child, it sounded like not knowing the addition facts was really going to slow them down and make second grade math with confidence pretty difficult. And so if you're coming from a different program where your child really hasn't learned those addition facts up to 9 plus 9, I would recommend using addition facts that stick before starting second grade math with confidence. It's just a 6-week program. It's a different math fact, a different set of addition facts each week for 6 weeks. And it'll just give your child just that knowledge they need to be successful in the second grade program. So I also get a lot of questions about materials. And so here are some of the ones I get most frequently. So way to represent numbers that we use quite a bit in Math with Confidence is this 10 frame. And it's this picture up here at the top of the screen of 10 boxes in a row with a dividing line in the middle. And it helps kids learn to visualize numbers and break them into fives, fives and some more, or tens and some more. But some kids just don't like using them for whatever reason. And so if your child isn't a big fan, one thing to do is to use fun counters. You need about 125 counters for first grade, but you'll use like 20 of them more than anything else. So if you go to like the dollar section of Target or a dollar store, often they have like cute little fun erasers that can be great to fit on the 10 frame and make it a little more interesting. You can also put the 10 frame in a page protector and then use a dry erase marker to put X's on it rather than counters. It kind of keeps things moving a little faster, and kids often they just love using dry erase markers. And so that can be a different way to use it. And another option is to buy this little 20 bead abacus called a Reckon Rec. I think it's a Scandinavian word, where it has 20 beads arranged in groups of five. And it really serves the same purpose as the 10 frame because it helps kids start to think of numbers in groups of five and some more or 10 and some more. You can also use an abacus with beads grouped in five for a similar purpose. So these are just some ways to mix up the 10 frame if your child isn't a fan or if you just want some variety. Another thing, especially in first grade, that families sometimes have trouble with is that there's a lot of index cards. And this is something, if I ever revise it, I might try to simplify this a little bit, to be quite honest. But they're there for now, and they do serve really important purposes because they let you play all sorts of fun games with your kid. But index cards aren't the easiest to handle, especially for little hands. So first of all, you might consider using blank playing cards rather than index cards for the games. Some of the families in the Facebook community have reported they really love this. You can get a deck of blank playing cards on Amazon for less than 10 bucks. And then once you've made your index cards or your blank playing cards, just take 4 envelopes or zip top bags at the beginning of the year and just label them like this. This is for first grade, I should clarify, not second grade. Second grade's a bit simpler in that respect. There's more playing cards used. But for first grade, definitely label these at the beginning of the year. This picture is in the introduction to the instructor guide, and I'll also send it in the list I'm going to send you shortly. And so use that to keep them organized so they're just not so overwhelming. And then another common question I get is, I have multiple kids. How can I streamline the lessons? And it's really true. Teaching 3 or more math lessons a day can take a lot of time. But I encourage you to do it anyway, even if it is difficult. There's no substitute for real teaching in both math and reading in the elementary years. Even if you aren't able to get to a whole lot of science or social studies as a result, you are setting your child on a path for academic success for life by giving them a strong foundation in both math and reading. So I just really encourage you to prioritize those, even if it's at the expense of some of the other subjects. And this is especially true in lower elementary, but also in upper elementary and even beyond. If you think back to your own high school math classes, I bet you really either are glad you had a teacher or wish you'd had a teacher. Everyone needs support, accountability, someone to ask questions. It's very difficult to learn complex topics on your own. But I also get it. I know that the lessons can take a bit. And so here's just a couple thoughts on how to streamline the lessons. First of all, keep your supplies as organized as possible. Get that binder with those page protectors. Keep one math kit that has everything in it. Put it all away at the end of the day. It will make a difference. Second, adjust the warm-up activities to fit your child's needs. So in first and second grade, there's counting, memory work, and review at the beginning of each lesson. If there's one thing you're going to cut from the program, just looking at the counting and review and seeing, which one of these does my child really need, or which one does my child really need practice with either of these skills? If your child doesn't, it's okay to not do those. Just do the memory work question and move on. Another thing that a lot of families love to do is have the older children play games with the younger children. It can be a fun refresher for the older child, and they often enjoy playing together. Or if you just don't have time for the games sometimes, you don't have to play them. A different option is to simply look at what the game is practicing, look at that skill, and just give your child a few of the practice problems instead. The main purpose of the games is to have fun, to have a positive attitude towards math, but it's also typically to practice one specific skill. And it's fine to practice that skill a different way rather than through the game if you don't have time. And then lastly, if you have multiple kids, why don't you, it's a good idea to pick one enrichment activity to do each week from out of all the different grade levels, or to skip it entirely. If you don't have time to do those enrichment activities, it's perfectly fine. Have your kids watch some of the picture books on YouTube and call it a day. And so just really focus on what's most important, that core math instruction, and then your child getting good practice with it. Okay. And then here I have my top 10 tips for teaching math, but I see that it's already 3:20, so I'm going to go through these very quickly, and they'll be in the handout you can download after the workshop. I want to make sure we can get to your questions. So, my top 10 tips for teaching math. First, avoid the curriculum overcomplication danger zone. Pick one curriculum and just teach the heck out of it. Don't try to combine lots of things. Don't buy a lot of supplements and get all, in a fluster trying to figure out how you're going to schedule them. Whether it's Math with Confidence or a different program, I really recommend starting the fall with one curriculum and that's it. Teach your heart out with it. And then October, if you feel like you need to add something to it, those books will still be available for you to buy. Plan a consistent math time at least 4 days per week. Really, really, really try to make sure your child is learning math 4 days a week. Kids really need that consistency, that practice without too much time passing in between lessons. When they start to forget things in between lessons, it can be very discouraging for them and very frustrating for you. Even if you don't get in your full lesson, even if you're teaching that math lesson in the dentist's office or on the way to a soccer game or on the sidelines of that soccer game, try to get in at least that 15 to 20 minutes 4 times a week so that your child keeps that consistent learning, keeps growing in those little steps. I know this one can be a hard one, but if possible, just take a quick look over the lesson the day before. The lesson often goes a lot smoother if you just had a chance to skim it and see what the point of it is. Don't just hand your child the workbook. Like I said, the workbook is really meant to practice what you have taught your child. All of the actual teaching is in the instructor guide. And especially in these younger grades, it's very important that you work through those hands-on concrete activities to help your child make sense of math. But with that said, you are the teacher, not the curriculum. You're the person who sees the actual kid in front of you. There might be some activities where you're just like, this one doesn't work for my kid, or oh, I think my kid will learn more from it if I modify this way, or my kid totally knows this, we're going to skip this. You trust your gut. You are the teacher and you know your kid best. I'm just somebody writing curriculum. I'm not there in your actual situation. So feel free to modify based on what you see in your own kid. In the same way, if there are tears or frustration, take a break. Some days everybody's having a bad day. It's usually not very productive to fight through that. It's fine to say, okay, we're done for the day. We'll pick up again tomorrow. And it usually goes better the next day, especially if your child's frustrated about a math concept. It might just totally make sense the next day when he's not hungry or tired or about to get a cold. And this related to that, expect the occasional bad day or week, especially in November or February. You're human and your kids are human, and your homeschool will reflect that. Don't doubt your choices on when you have that occasional bad day. It's just kind of par for the course, and you don't have to worry that you're teaching badly, that you've chosen the wrong curriculum, that you can't do this. Everybody's going to have some of those occasional days, and just let them float on by and move on to the next one. Another thing that I see more with older kids, but I want you to be thinking about first and second grade too, is to keep the end in mind and don't worry if your child isn't on grade level. So after sixth grade math with confidence, children will be ready to start pre-algebra. But children can start pre-algebra anywhere from seventh to ninth grade and still finish a college prep math curriculum in high school. So there's a lot of mush there in that middle school math. And if you end up taking a little bit longer to finish the first grade book or the second grade book, if your child isn't exactly on grade level, if you've decided to go back to first or second grade for an older child because that's where their skills are at, don't worry about it. Giving them a strong foundation now is so much more important than just rushing to stay on grade level. Ninth, model a growth mindset in math for your child. In America, we tend to think of people as either being math brained or not, thinking of math as an innate skill that some people have and some people don't. But that's really not true. Math really comes through practice, through hard work, through seeking to understand. And so, as you work with your child in math, try to avoid saying things like, oh, well, I guess you're just not good at math, or, oh, look, so and so is very mathy. But instead, to really praise hard work, to praise perseverance, and to encourage your child to just try their best in everything they do rather than worried about whether they're mathy or not. And in the same way, cultivate a growth mindset in math for yourself. Um, you may have hated math. You may have not gotten very good grades in math. But often that's a result of the kind of math education you got and not any sort of innate ability. You are doing this hard thing of homeschooling your child, of organizing an education for your children. And you are very capable of learning and growing in math just along with your children. Some of my pilot testers, especially in fifth and sixth grade, have just been amazed at how many things they understand now that they didn't when they were in school, like things like multiplying fractions or dividing decimals and understanding why all these things work. So if you just keep reading the Teaching Math with Confidence, if you keep on making sure you understand what you're teaching your child, you can just grow right along with them. Okay, so that's my top 10 tips very quickly. And there will be links to the handouts that how to prep for the year and the top 10 tips, as well as a link to the recording available in your email by tomorrow. And if you're watching the recording later, look for that link in the YouTube description. And then if you haven't bought your books, Well-Trained Minds final summer sale ends Wednesday. That's tomorrow if you're watching this live, with 40% off digital items and 35% off physical books. So definitely check that out if you haven't had a chance to get your books yet. Okay, so I'm going to stop my screen share here. Okay, and now I'm ready for Q&A. So if you look at the bottom, there is a Q&A button down in that toolbar. And if you click on that, you could go ahead and put your question right on in there. And so Donna's been answering some of these as we've been going. And then I've got a couple here that I'll answer live. Feel free to add more in as well as I'm talking. So one person asked, is there a specific reason for using a one-line 10 frame versus a double line 10 frame where one row of five is stacked on top of another? Very curious, as I'd never seen a single line 10 frame until previewing Math with Confidence. And so, yeah, so this is a little bit unusual. A lot of kindergarten and first grade programs, especially for public schools, use a 2 by 5 10 frame rather than a 1 by 10. And I use it for a couple reasons, but the main one is that it lets kids kind of get to the line. They visually go all the way to the end before starting over. It really reinforces that sense of the group of 10. It's also more similar to the base 10 blocks that you will use in second grade. And it also I think it also lends itself a little bit better to adding and subtracting because you can kind of see the whole line of things. You can see like 3 plus the 4, for example, on the 10 frame to see how they go together to make 7. So that's kind of the main reasons. Samantha said, I know you mentioned not needing to master every step to move on. Do you have advice for a first grader who struggles with subitizing and also feels the need to count on the 10 frame every time instead of starting at 5, for example, if 8 is shown on the 10 frame? That's a very common issue for first graders who are still getting used to subitizing, to recognizing quantities visually. And so if you haven't seen a 10 frame before, or if you aren't familiar with the 10 frame, there's kind of a group of 5 and then like 3 more when you put the counters on there. And so my main recommendation is to keep on working on the subitizing, Samantha, to do a lot of those flash games where you say put 8 on the 10 frame and you cover the whole thing and then just show it so that your child doesn't have time to count. Sometimes that really helps. Or covering it, uncovering, and then saying, take a picture with your mind and having them really try to visualize it in their head. Another option is to just cover the group of 5. So if you cover the group of 5 and say, okay, we know there's 5 over here. And then there's, oh no, but you said your child does start at 5, so that doesn't apply to that. Um, and I guess the other thing I would say is that it's one of those things that takes practice. So don't be discouraged. It might be that your child just needs another couple months of brain development, and all of a sudden they'll get it. So it's one of those things that sometimes just takes some kids a little bit of extra time. Sabrina says, I love math with confidence so much, would like to consider using it for our small homeschool co-op in first grade. Do you think this is possible with a once or twice a week meeting? I absolutely do, but certainly it requires all the parents being on board and using it and having a pretty clear schedule of what will be happening at that, at the co-op each week. There's quite a few little micro schools that use the program in that way. And a lot of them are in the Math with Confidence Facebook group. So I'd also recommend posting that there and getting their input because I think there's some good suggestions there. Angel says, my child still struggles with the mental math concepts in second grade. We are trying to move on so as not to beat a dead horse. Very wise, Angel. Will this be revisited in later grades? Is it okay to move on? Yes, absolutely. This will be covered again in third grade. And so your child will get more opportunities to practice this. And again, your child might just need a little bit more time. In the meantime, definitely make sure that you're letting your child use those manipulatives as much as necessary and really just focus on that conceptual development, conceptual understanding of the mental math steps, even if doing them all actually in his or her head is a little bit too difficult still. Um, is there a benefit or a disadvantage of single color versus color coded base 10 blocks? I'm worried about my child relying on memorizing color coding as a shortcut, but I haven't found a good, affordable single color set. So some base 10 blocks come like where all the ones are one color, the tens are a different color, hundreds, and so on, versus some where they're like the set I have is just everything's blue. Um, I don't think I appreciate you thinking about whether your child will just memorize the color coding. But if you already have the different colored set or that's just the most affordable option for you, I wouldn't worry about it. The different sizes really do help make a difference. And your child will also see single colored sets in the second grade workbook. So they'll see them in that way and won't be able to just rely on the color coding. Angela asks, have many students with dyscalculia used your program successfully? Yes, absolutely. A lot of the very incremental instruction that I use, as well as the lots of hands-on concrete learning and the consistent practice is very beneficial for kids who have dyscalculia. And this is again a great question to ask in the Facebook group because there are a lot of parents there who talk about their experiences with the program for kids who are neurodivergent in many different ways. Martina asks, can I combine my kindergartner and first grader for first grade, or would you recommend to do separate ones? So this is one where I think family dynamics are almost as important as the math. Often for, older kids do not appreciate having a tag along sibling. And so you know your kids best, you know how that's going to go. It's especially tricky if the younger sibling is better at math or kind of picks it up a little bit more quickly than the older one. So watch out for that and think about if that's what you want to have them doing. But beyond that, if look at the same kind of placement advice that I was talking about before, how you know whether or not a child is ready to start first grade math with confidence, and assess that whether or not that's like a good fit. Garrett is asking about getting me to do middle and high school courses. Sorry, Garrett. Sixth grade will be the last level in the Math with Confidence series. I've been writing pretty nonstop for the last 7 years, and elementary math is really my area of expertise. I'll be putting out some recommendations for programs beyond sixth grade once I finish the series. Um, Katrine asks, I bought first grade Math with Confidence a book a year ago, and I was with the sale, I'm thinking of buying already for the next grade. Does it constantly change a lot? Would it be better to buy when that level is near already, or should it be okay to purchase early? Honestly, Katrine, Well-Trained Mind is really wonderful about having regular sales throughout the year. And so I wouldn't worry about stockpiling it at this point. They will have sales throughout the year. If you watch their Instagram or get on their mailing list, you will hear about all those sales, and they will have another great summer sale next year. So no need to worry about it or worry about having it now. Okay, I think I've talked to all of the I think I've answered all of the questions, so we're gonna wrap it up there. Thank you all so much for attending this webinar. Thanks for using Math with Confidence and just for the passion you bring to teaching your kids math. Look for the handouts and the link to the video in your email by the end of the day tomorrow. And I hope you have a great year of math. Happy math.